I'm sure you've heard this old song called Over the Waves. You thought it was a silly children's song, but it's actually written by a Mexican composer called Juventino Rosas. And what does that mean for us? That means we can play it on Spanish guitar and still feel sophisticated. This is a real easy version of this song. We're going to stay in the first position, playing a C chord, we got a G chord, and an F chord. Pretty much that's it. There's one interesting harmonic thing going on there, but for the most part, it's a 1-4-5 in the key of C. And because we're playing in the first position, that's kind of what we do when we play beginner pieces, although I think that's kind of a misnomer or almost a paradox, because this is the hardest place to play on the guitar. But for beginner songs, we tend to stay there. We're going to creep up here to the 5th fret just for one single note. But let's look right now real quick at this entire piece. It's nice and short, Over the Waves. We can also call it Sobre las Olas. All right, that seems pretty manageable, doesn't it? We're going to be in the key of C, like I said. It's going to be an easy version, but we should probably never use the word easy because everything has its difficulties if we really do it right. And here, to let those melody notes ring out like they should across measures, it's going to take a little bit of effort, and that's a great study. So just because something is quote unquote easy doesn't mean that we can't get a lot of benefit out of it. Actually, we might be able to get more of a technique and practice benefit out of a song that is quote unquote easy, because it allows us to think about and dwell on the finer things, you could say. Hey, if you're like me and you can't get enough of the nylon string guitar, check out my website, theversatileguitarist.com. I've got all kinds of courses on different techniques and topics and songs. I also have a monthly membership that gives you access to everything that I have, and I even have a cheaper subscription to get just my tabs, where you get a play-along video for each and every song. I'm adding to it all the time, and this song is in there. Just to run through the music theory of this song, like I said, we're in the key of C. That we got our C major scale. Okay, so we have, sure enough, a C chord, and that's going to be going to a G chord, and that's the 5 chord. And that will often be a dominant 7th chord. The 5 chord in a major key, talking about the major scale, can always be a dominant 7th chord, because if you count to 7 from that 5th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you get what is called a minor 7th, a flat 7, and that's just built into the major scale. That gives us a lot of nice tension, and it makes your ear want to hear that resolution to the 1, in this case C, more than it would if we didn't do that. So we have C is our 1, G is our 5 or G7, then we're back to C, and at some point we're going to go over here to F, which is our 4 chord. So those are the 3 major chords that exist in the major scale. 1, 4, 5, and back to 1. Luckily though, in this song, we don't have to bar it. We're just going to go like this. So that's part of what makes it a little bit easier than it would have been. Then we have a D minor, actually, later on in the song. That's the 2 chord. The 2nd note of the major scale gives us a minor chord every time. That's the 2. On the way to the 2, though, we're going to play quickly an A7. So it's a simple song, but this is not that simple of an idea. This is a secondary dominant. This is the 5 of the 2 chord, we could say. If we were in the key of D minor with a 1, then A7 would be the 5. Because A7 doesn't belong in the key of C. It should be A minor or A minor 7, but it becomes A7 only so that we can get to the 2 chord, and it sounds like it really wants to happen there. Look for things like that in songs that you know and new songs that you learn. These little theory ideas are great, and they just help us have a more intimate understanding of the song, and I think that's a great thing. But also it helps us play, I think, the song better and memorize it faster and know it for longer, and it's just going to make you a better musician. Let's dive into playing the song measure by measure. Like I said, we're starting off with C. We're going to grab 2 strings here. At the same time, my thumb's playing the root, and then I have this E note here on the 4th string. Play those at the same time. See that follow-through motion I'm making with my thumb? That helps us get a better tone and more volume. And I have a follow-through motion with my index as well, going past, in either direction, both of those strings. And then we have this little waltz thing here. When you get into these waltzes, you'll find that if you can kind of play the 2nd beat staccato, kill it a little bit earlier, it has a cooler sound. Did you notice that? It's not written into the music because you don't have to do it. If we didn't do it, that would sound like this. Still sounds fine, but I like to go. has a little more attitude. So we go. I was still holding the C note down in the second measure, let it ring out. We have this note, D sharp or E flat, then back to E. That's like a bluesy thing. That's like the cool sounding minor third there. Not in the key, it's a little color tone. See, the whole time there, that bass note was ringing out. So important, and this is what makes it not easy. You could probably slog through this thing and play it more or less correctly without letting these things ring out, and it would be pretty easy to play. But when we do what I want you to do, it's going to make it a little harder. So let's call it lower intermediate. Now the melody there is the C note, and we're playing two C's at the same time. So really try to bring out, I'm using my ring finger on that note, and that reserves these two fingers to play the waltz rhythm again on the 2, staccato, right? And the 3. I think that measure, that's measure number 3, would be good to repeat forever. The ring finger is a weaker finger, but in so many cases we need it to bring out the melody. Like that ring finger plays the melody very often because it's closer to the floor, and that means it's closer to a high sounding string, and the melody is 99% of the time the highest note that we hear. That's another kind of paradox thing. We have a weak finger, the ring finger is weaker than the other ones. The pinky is so weak that we don't even use it unless we're doing a raw scale, okay? But the ring finger needs so often to be the melody note, and we need to have that melody note be louder and not get crowded out by the other notes. So that means we have to have a little more finesse in that ring finger so we can bring out the volume more. And sometimes bringing out the volume doesn't mean slamming it as hard as you can. It might mean quieting down the other fingers, which is another challenge. Play a nice light thumb to allow that ring finger to get more volume. Here the bass changes on the next measure. So we're looking at measures 3 and 4. Now I'm jumping back here to C, using our pinky there. Notice how curved my knuckles are here, something that people really have a struggle doing. But I want to be clear of this high E string. It doesn't even matter now because we're not playing the high E string, but this is how we want your pinky to look, and not like this, or it's blocking that string. Make sure your palm here is kind of equidistant on both sides of your hand, right? I'm not like this, and I'm surely not like that. That would be really hard, and we don't need to do that. But if we can keep that equal distance, then it helps us pinky bend more and be clear of the next string. Okay, that's the first 2 lines, the first 8 measures. Let's do it again. Now we're going to keep this G ringing out and play this F note with it. That is a G7. A sharp, or B flat, I like to call it A sharp. Another one of those chromatic color tones. Not in the key, but it just sounds very whimsical, doesn't it? There, it doesn't say to do it in the music, and it very often won't, but I like to roll those sometimes. We're playing G, then D, the G string again, or G an octave higher, and then the C note on this string. We can play it as a block, but sometimes I like to roll into it. There's A sharp again. And then notice how I just keep this ring finger down. Now we're on the second half of the song, it starts the same way. Now here, we're on that F chord. Look at this transition here. This is a little bit a problem too. That's just part of the C chord, but then we have to play this A note, and that means that this note dies, so I don't like that. That note gets cut off right there, but we have to do it. Keep your middle finger anchored on this A note, and then we build this F chord. Now we're playing on the bass strings here. You can use your ring finger there on the A note and your thumb on the bass. Whenever you can, try to, in a lot of these waltzes, a lot of these classic waltzes, use your ring finger on the melody note, thumb on the bass, and then reserve these for the 2. We can't always do it. Depends on what's happening, but when we can, we try to do that. So I'm jumping back to the measure before. now here we're on D minor. I would be tempted to use my pinky here if we weren't about to use it in a second here. So use your ring finger there. That feels awful, I think, to most people and to me. But we're gonna do it this way. Pinky stretch up there. Leave your pinky on the string, but with no pressure. Don't grind into the frets. Be touching the string, but this really helps us, called a guide finger, really helps us in a stable way get to the next note that we're shooting for. Okay, so we went like this. D minor. Keep it on the string. Now we're on C again. Here's our A7. You're used to playing A7 like this maybe. But this is just a piece of A7. It's really all that we need to render an A7 chord, but we have an F note on there. Then it becomes E. Okay, last 8 measures. And that is the whole piece. Sometimes on a C chord like that, I like to do things like this and play C way up here because it just has a deeper tone. It sounds bassier and it sounds more full as opposed to this one. It's just something I like to do. And because we're in the middle of the string, it lets you get a little more vibrato in there if you wanted to get fancy. So that is an easy version of Sobre las Olas, which we know as Over the Waves. I told you it was going to be easy, but if you really try to make things legato like they should be, that means letting those bass notes and more importantly the melody notes really ring out for their full value. That's not the easiest thing in the world at all, but it's very, very important when we're playing chord melodies. So let's call this a Mexican song, even though you might not have known that it was. And if you like this one, let's do another song from France in the first position, also in the key of C, also pretty easy, right here.